started. Let's get started. If everyone would take it down, we can end the conversations. Let's get started. Let's get started. There are a few people who are still marching in. Again, for those of you who wish to do so, come on in. You can sit on the floor in the proverbial mosh pit up here. Okay. Just a few introductory comments, and then I'll turn it over to our town manager, Garrett. I want to welcome all of you. To say that I'm surprised by seeing such a vast turnout would be a great surprise, because we've done these in the past. The turnout from the Fairfax community has been just like this, and thank you all for coming. For those who are watching it elsewhere, we are videotaping this, and it will be streamed online and then put up on the website and other places for folks who couldn't be here today to have that opportunity to see the conversation. And it is a conversation. This is a forum for us to discuss these issues. It will not be the last one. So while it may be very difficult for everybody to get up and make the 2-minute comment that they would like, please be assured that this will not be the last opportunity that you have to do so. Very important, this is a joint meeting of the Council, the General Plan Implementation Committee, and your Planning Commission. We're not going to take any action here today. This is our opportunity to listen to you and to gather all of the comments that you're making, so that when we sit down to make an informed decision, we have the full breadth and opportunity and the scope of your thoughts on the issue that's been bedeviling us for the last couple of months. I know that I don't have to mention the idea that when we're all gathered here, we treat each other with respect, so no hooting, clapping, all that sort of stuff. It's all in the spirit of gathering information. I would ask one thing. There's been some conversation. If you feel comfortable doing so when you come up to the microphone, if you want to tell us your name and where you come from, that'd be great. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's fine too. Don't feel the need to do so. I would say to those who are visiting us from outside of Fairfax, if you could hold your comments to the end, we would, I think, really like to hear the Fairfax folks first, and we will get to everybody else. I must say that I know it's scheduled from 1 to 3, but I have nowhere else to be, so I'll be sticking around, and I'll talk until the owls come out. I think that's about it. Finally, one last thing. I think we all want to take a moment of, just a moment of pause. Our fellow council member, Barbara Cole, is not here today. Her mom passed away yesterday, and long illness, and so I know that I extend the condolences of the Fairfax community to Barbara and her family at what I'm sure is a very difficult time. And with that, I will turn it over to Garrett Toy, and thank you again for coming by.
Right before we get started, I think the mayor indicated that it's a special council meeting, so we know 4 of the council members are here. But I have to do the roll call for the Planning Commission too. And maybe we can do it simple. Can just the Planning Commissioners just raise their hand? Who's here? So we have, what's that, 5? 6? Okay. Okay, we got that. So record that. What about GPIC? How many people from GPIC are here? What's that? GPIC's the General Plan Implementation Committee. That looks like 5? 5. Can you hear me now? Okay. So we have 5 members from the General Plan Implementation Committee, so that's a majority. And, 6. 6 members? 5, sorry. 1, 2, 3, okay. 6, okay. So that's just for the record. And then the Affordable Housing Committee, I don't think we have a quorum. Let's see, 1, maybe 2. Okay, so we're not officially opening that meeting. All right, so we've opened those 3 meetings, so now we're good to go. Okay, again, I'm Garrett Toy, I'm the town manager. I'd like to welcome everyone for attending today. Now, the council scheduled this forum for really the purpose of providing an opportunity for the community and its residents an opportunity to learn more about the general plan, specifically the land use and the housing policies, and provide you an opportunity to ask questions and provide your feedback in a more informal setting. And so that's really the purpose of the day of the meeting. Again, as the mayor indicated, we're not recommending we take any action, but really get more feedback on the topics. In terms of the presentations, you will have a primer on the presentations by Larry Kennings. He's our planning consultant that prepared the general plan. You also have a presentation by Jim Moore, our Planning and Building Services Director, and he will touch more on actually housing element policies as well as Ordinance 778. 778 is, again, those were the actions that the council took related to rezoning parcels in compliance with our general plan and housing element. Sorry, I'll speak up. And the next thing related to that is you will also see, in addition to that information, you also see that there's a certain number of issues and concerns that a staff has heard over the last few months that will be part of the presentation, as well as proposed strategies and approaches for addressing those policies or concerns that were raised. So within that, again, what we're like is feedback and your questions. So to make sure that we're having an opportunity to hear from everyone, we retain the services of Joan Chaplet with MIG to help moderate the question and comment period. So before I turn it over to Joan, I think the last thing is just to point out is Michelle Gardner, our town clerk, will be recording your questions and comments on the flip chart. We are actually streaming this live, videotaping it. We do plan to put that on the town website, as well as pictures of all the boards and all the other materials that were on the table. I think the other thing is it's an optional sign-in sheet, and that's really so we can get your emails to send you further information if you're interested. Again, we'll have all this information on there. So with that, really like to encourage everybody to share their feedback, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to Joan to go over the meeting for me.
Welcome everyone. So my name again is Joan Chaplet, and I'll be serving as the moderator today. And there are so many of you here today, and we want to make sure that you get a chance to get all your questions answered and that everyone gets a chance to comment. So I'll be helping to manage that part of the meeting. So after we finish just a brief review of the meeting format, as Garrett explained, you'll hear a presentation from Larry Kennings. That will be followed by a presentation by Jim Moore. We would like the presenters to be able to complete their presentations before we take any questions, and then we'll use the remaining time to give everyone a chance to ask their question and make comments. When you make comments, if you do want to speak, whether a question or a comment, we'll ask you to come over here to the left. We have a microphone here. And again, this is being live streamed and recorded for the web, so we will need you to use the microphone so that you can be heard both in this room and on the web, and then staff will be responding using the microphone as well, so that information is recorded. We'll try and limit everyone to 2 minutes. If you ask a question, obviously the response won't count towards your time, but we are seeking to have as many people speak as possible. And as the mayor said, we are scheduled till 3, but given the number of people here, we'll be staying longer to make sure we achieve that goal of getting all the input we need. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Larry to start our presentation.
Thank you. Hope you don't mind if I don't stand up, because the good Lord took away my legs a while ago. We've had several comments from people that have attended the meetings about the terms we use in the planning process and what they mean, and people are confused because they don't understand what they are. So I'm going to try to go through some of those right now, kind of a planning 101 class, if you don't mind. A little background. In 1937, the state of California mandated that all the cities and counties in the state have to have a general plan. And in 1969, a little over 30 years later, they added a housing element to the list of the mandated elements. Those elements are land use, circulation, housing I already mentioned, open space, conservation, safety, and noise. And of those 7 mandatory elements, the housing element is the only one that has very specific requirements. The others are subject to the state's guidelines. So some flexibility in land use and circulation, but in housing there are very specific requirements as far as data, site analysis, allocation of where the units go, things like that. The state allows the town to amend the general plan no more than 4 times a year. And very few communities, cities, towns, and counties, very few have really taking advantage of those 4 times a year. The state also allows us to include optional elements if we want to, and we went ahead, the town did do a 8th element, which is called the town center element. So we have 7 mandatory elements and 1 optional element that we're working with. The optional element can be revised as many times as the town would like to. The others can only be revised or amended 4 times. Now the state law requires that the housing element be updated every 7 years, and our next cycle starts next year, 2015. One of the requirements of for the housing element is that we review all the objectives and goals of the current housing element as part of the new one. Now, the last time the town had a certified housing element was 1990. And we went through all the objectives in that element to see which ones had been achieved. And none of the housing sites were built on, none of the units were built. So we really, Lou Tremaine called it, we were kind of under the state's radar at that time. They really didn't pay much attention to Fairfax because they had a lot of other cities like Oakland and Berkeley that really had a heavier load. Folks have asked us how these numbers get assigned. And the process starts with the Department of Finance in Sacramento, and they use population projections and income, housing income, to identify what they call the allocation for each town or city or county. And they take these, the state takes these projections, Department of Finance takes the projection, gives them to the Department of Housing and Community Development, or what we call HCD. HCD then takes the numbers and confers with the local council of governments. In our area here, you probably are familiar with ABAG. That's been in the press a lot with the Plan Bay area, things like that. So ABAG is our council of governments. ABAG takes HCD numbers and allocates the numbers to us based on population, based on income, and then allocates it on a basis of very low, low, and moderate. And then they tell us how many units we're supposed to have in each one of those categories. They also, ABAG also reviews the available sites where housing can be developed. Now we've had a big concern with that. I think in 2002, I brought the folks from HCD up here to visit Fairfax and to look at the available sites. And I said, folks, you may want us to develop a whole bunch of new units, but most of our sites are 45 degrees or in a floodplain or have some other issue. We just don't have any property to put these units on, regardless of how adamant you are about us doing that. And fortunately for us, I mean, I had a conversation with Larry Bragman one day, and we said, let's do it our way. Let's do it the Fairfax way. And about the same time, the Lutheran Church pastor came to us and said, we want to do some senior housing. And at almost the same time, I found a letter in the files in the planning department from Joe Wanseeler, who said that he owned the Ten Olima Road site, and he wanted to do some affordable housing also. And fortunately for us, Joe is here today, and I don't think he really wants to talk, but he's a wonderful man and was really interested in doing some workforce housing on his site. So these two things happened to us at the same time. the church came forward and Joe came forward. The allocation that ABAG gives us is called the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. And Jim's going to go into this in further detail, but that's commonly referred to as RHNA, Regional Housing Needs Allocation. Once the general plan is approved, and we went through this process of the general plan for years, and it was a long process, the town had created the General Plan Advisory Committee years ago. That committee went through a lot of iterations. It changed population, people added, people left, and we worked on the general plan for a long time. But and it was finally approved by the Planning Commission and the Town Council. Well, once the general plan is approved, then the zoning ordinance has to be modified or has to comply with the general plan. So for example, if we were to redesignate an area such as a Lutheran church for housing, we'd have to revise the zoning ordinance to match that configuration. If there was no change in the general plan, then the zoning ordinance wouldn't have to be revised unless it was out of alignment with the general plan. Trying to look at my notes here. The Fairfax general plan is really a kind of a unique character in the state of California. Most general plans, most communities will hire a group of consultants. They'll come in and prepare almost a template using the last general plan they worked on to try to fit it to the community. We did ours just the opposite. Ours was from the bottom up. The people that were on GPAC wrote your general plan. I gave them guidance, but Bruce Ackerman and John Reed, for example, wrote the circulation element. Mimi Newton was really responsible for the open space element. So our plan came from the people. It was really the people's plan. If you look at other plans in other communities in the Bay Area, you'll see a similarity. They all look like they came off of a roll of general plans. Ours is different. Ours came from the people. Besides the GPAC, the Affordable Housing Committee, the Planning Commission, and the Town Council all touched that general plan and approved it. So it really is your plan. It's not my plan or the consultant's plan. It's really your plan. Now there was several handouts that were on the table. I know that we printed about 100 of each. I hope everybody's got one. If you don't have one, if you could share with your neighbors. But you should have a sheet that shows the goals and objectives. You should have, just the goals. You should have a sheet that shows the RHNA numbers. There should be a couple of sheets that show the comments that we received at the Planning Commission meetings and the Town Council hearings. There should also be a sheet that the colored version that shows the slide that's on the screen right now. And that's basically what I've been talking about. Again, this is another example of how your plan was created by the folks. This diagram was created by the current General Plan Implementation Committee, or GPIC. And you'll hear reference to GPAC and GPIC today. I'm sure Jim's going to mention them several times. There's also a stapled document of several pages called the Citizens Guide to Planning. And that was printed by the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, otherwise known as OPR, when Gray Davis was the governor. So that was something that OPR handed out or made available to the jurisdictions just for this kind of exercise, so people can understand what's going on. All right, Jim Moore, your planning director, is going to talk more about the zoning ordinance and the RENA and all the other acronyms that I talked about. So I'll hand this ice cream cone over to him.
Thank you, Larry. Can you all hear me okay? I think these are different mics. If anyone can't hear me during this, please speak up. As I mentioned, my name is Jim Moore, and I'm... Sorry? Hold it away? Okay, is that good? Good, 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 good. Okay. Anyway, thank you all for coming today. Wow, this is fantastic. I've had the honor of being the town's Director of Planning and Development, Planning and Building Services for a little over 5 years. I came in not long after the state had rejected the 2006 housing element and was honored to participate in the ground-up process that Larry had already been involved with for, say, 7 years. So today, what I'm going to do, my role is to explain to you what the regional housing needs allocation for us was that came from the state through the Association of Bay Area Governments, walk you through our strategy, the town's strategy for meeting that regional housing needs allocation, the RENA, and walk through each of the strategies which are on the back wall here, and I'm going to put them up as slides as we go through. I'm also going to mention what Ordinance 778 was intended to do, and as Larry mentioned, that is bring the town's zoning ordinance and zoning map into compliance with the adopted general plan and housing element. Then we're going to review a couple of corrections we've found along the way, thanks to people in the public pointing out errors, omissions, or inconsistencies. And I want to emphasize how grateful we are that that was done. And we look forward to any other errors, omissions, or inconsistencies that might be in the document, because we're continually trying to make it a better document. So for those that have come before and pointed out some errors, omissions, and inconsistencies, thank you. And we're hoping again that today we can learn some more and move forward with correcting those and keep this living document up to snuff. And as we approach the new regional housing needs allocation that, as Larry said, starts in the next cycle next year, that we've got this one all under control. And then lastly, I'm going to summarize what are the next steps for staff going back to the town council. So again, these slides are also on the back wall. So after today, after the presentations, you can all circle back and look at them again. And also, as Larry mentioned, we made 100 handouts, and obviously we're over 100 people. So they will be put up on the town's website where the general plan lives also and where the amended housing element also lives. So, and likewise, this show or this videotape will be posted on the internet after that. So I'm going to start with this very important slide. I'm sorry, we're going to try and go through each presentation and then take comments.
We're going to continue with the presentation according to our agenda. So Jim, if you would continue, please.
Thank you. Okay, is this in focus here? Okay, again, if you can't see it, you can circle back at the end. The top here is a graph of what the regional housing needs allocation was for the town. There's one line that shows the planning cycle from 99 to 2006, and it's actually broken down by income range from extremely low, which is 30% of the area median, on up to above moderate. And below above moderate is moderate and below. And you might ask, well, why is the state interested in building houses that are moderate or above? And it's very important to get this concept, whether you agree with it or not. There is the idea of supply and demand. When you have a demand for housing and less supply, housing rents and costs go up. And conversely, when you have more supply, then there's more competition and prices go down. I might add that one of the reasons the state is planning for future growth is the projections for the Bay Area between 2010 and 2040 is 9.3 million more people coming to the Bay Area. That's a lot of people to the Bay Area. And so what the Association of Bay Area Governments does is breaks that down per jurisdiction and allocates them. So the total for 99 to 2006 was 64. The total from 2007 to 2014 was 108. The combined is 172. That is what we were tasked with covering and accommodating through zoning changes that allow for the potential of those units to be built. And this right here is a summary table of exactly how the town met that obligation under state law. There are basically 6 opportunity sites. And these sites are broken down on the boards on the back wall. All 6 are back there, along with a summary right as you come in the door of all 6 sites. We were able to actually go back and data mine sites that were already zoned and or buildings, residences that were built since '99, and we were able to get credit from the state for those 48 units. So of the 172, we actually got credit for 48 that were already built, or excuse me, zoned for or built. So when you subtract the 48, you're really talking about 124 units. Next slide, please. Okay? Sorry, let's go back. Okay, so thank you. So this caveat is saying establishing a minimum base density of 20 units per acre at the 2 sites, that's Lutheran Church and Tenalima, base density of 20 units an acre, only satisfies the state requirement for low income or below affordability ranges. However, nothing precludes the town from imposing additional affordability requirements on a project-by-project basis in each opportunity site identified in the housing element. So again, the state allows you, if you create a base density, which is the subject of a lot of controversy, then to not have to go back and verify that you've hit all these below moderate income ranges. They figure if you create that kind of infill at that kind of density, then you're actually helping the state meet its housing objectives. Remember, when I came in 09, the 06 housing element had been rejected. The state was pushing for 3 floors in the downtown and a base density, I think, of what, 30 in the downtown, which is the subject of countywide consternation. We only accommodated the state on base density at the 2 sites, the Lutheran Church site up the canyon, 40 units of senior housing, 100% targeted for from 30 to 50% of the area median income. And in general, the area median income for Marin right now is about $103,000. So it's pretty easy math. At 30%, you're talking to someone with $30,000 a year income or less than $3,000 a month. And for Tenalima, and I believe Joe is here today, Joe has agreed graciously to provide half of the units, should they be built, at 50% at 30 to 50% area median income. He already owns the land, so that's a leg up on that project. And actually, the church project has brought in a nonprofit developer from Berkeley that's already secured $500,000 in grants, which are called community development block grants from the county, and $200,000 from Marin Community Foundation. And they are well on their way to meeting 100% affordable project from 30 to 50% of the area median income. So 40 units already out of the 124 we know are targeted for very low income seniors. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is the summary map that's backed by the door coming in. And if you're going to look at one page in the housing element, it's over 100 pages. This is the page. I think it's H71. And it shows the entire strategy of the housing element. And again, this lays out 40 units at the 20-acre Lutheran Church site. I'll get back to that in a moment. 22 units of workforce housing at Tenalima. And by the way, on both those sites, the Affordable Housing Committee sponsored an architect to come in and do what's called site capacity studies to see if we could do something at a human scale with not pack and stack, so to speak, at the church and at Tenalima. And that architect is actually a very gifted architect from Santa Cruz named Matthew Tacker, who does site capacity studies on a dime. We had a 2-day event. He did 2 iterations at the church, and he did 3 iterations at Tenalima. And my favorite for Tenalima was actually using what's called Katrina cottages, small cottages like the old motor courts on line with the old Diaz house in the back. And by the way, that Diaz house is one of the oldest houses is the oldest house in Fairfax. It was actually occupied at one point by the granddaughter of the Spanish soldier who received a land grant from the King of Spain for this whole area. And then aside from the old house, we were actually looking at adaptive reuse of the old Mandarin in restaurant for live work for artists. So we're looking at 2 units in the old house, 4 in the old restaurant, and 16 cottages lined up with the old house at its head and the archway looking back. And the workforce housing was a really kind of a wonderful idea where they could share gardening, share childcare, and it's close enough just to walk downtown. Okay, moving on. School Street Plaza. While we had previously under the general plan and Ordinance 778 recommended that it go to Planned District Development, it was not part of our deal with the state that we would change it to PDD, Planned District Development. So we actually have thought it through a little bit more, and we're going to be coming back in with a recommendation that the front half facing Broadway go to Central Commercial, and maybe the back half stay at Planned District Development. We'll see. But we're going to be coming in with a slightly different recommendation on that. And then the 3 sites in the bookends of downtown, if you will, the west side commercial, sort of the either side of the Fairfax Market, the Fairfax area, and the east side, that little interesting eclectic mix of old homes on the east side. We basically targeted the possibility of, I believe it's 17 units on the west side, 22 in the Fairfax home. There's a lot of upstairs in the existing buildings that could be really cool live, work, artist space, as well as those big parking lagoons. And I might add that highway commercial, the bookends of town, came about after World War II. They're about cars, they're about sprawl. They're not about people. They're not about people-friendly places. They're monolithic buildings with parking lagoons. If you look at the fabric of the old part of the heart of town, it's buildings up to the front, retail or commercial on the ground floor with housing above. That's the traditional merchant culture of Europe and what laid out America. And it's what progressive planners tend to go back to nowadays with infill, because there's an economy of scale when you're keeping infrastructure up. The more people that are paying into that infrastructure for whether it's transit or sewer pipes, the more efficient the pattern is. And conversely, sprawl pattern is not sustainable from energy to infrastructure. Okay, so those are the strategies. 6 locations, that's it. In addition, down here, we are required by the state to identify areas that emergency shelter can come in. So in the general plan housing element, it identifies the new public domain or the central commercial area as allowing emergency shelter for homeless by right. And by the way, our quota of homeless in the last round, I believe we have 6 or 7 technically that are attributed to us. And then lastly, let's see. We intend to roll over the second unit amnesty ordinance, that redo the second unit amnesty ordinance, which has not been very successful in the past because parking for a lot of second units is a big deal, and the cost of putting sprinkler systems in is a very onerous requirement when you come in from having an informal, so we say illegal second unit and bringing it into compliance. So we are going to try and craft an amnesty ordinance that for the more central locations of town where it makes sense to relax the car requirement, another car parking space for second units. This has to go through the public process, and or relaxing the sprinkler requirement where it makes sense, where fire apparatus can get to quickly, either in the non-wildlife urban interface area in the heart of town, or from that up to a 30% slope. And again, the reasoning being that it's easier for fire to get there. We have, by the way, we have a lot of informal second units, and we had hoped to take credit for those in this housing element, but because the time period was coming to an end, the state didn't feel that we could bring them in from the cold. But we're looking forward to including in our next RHNA, our regional housing needs allocation of 61, which is due next year. We're hoping that the majority of that chunk we can get credit for the already built second units. And I might add, if we can get the second RHNA done, the state won't be on our backs until 2023. The town will be done until 2023. And if we don't do it next year, we'll have to keep a 5-year cycle instead of a 7, 8-year cycle. Okay, so here's the first site. I'm just going to whip through these real quick. The Lutheran Church site. They have 20 acres. Down here is the area that's actually been already built on, and the site capacity studies showed that within this area that's already been built, we believe a 2-acre parcel can be carved out, and that on that 2-acre parcel, within 2 floors, that 40 efficiency senior units can be built. And you might have heard, we have a silver tsunami coming in the county. That means a huge increase of senior population. I don't have the statistics on the top of my head, but the paper's been all over it lately, and the grand jury's been all over it too. Next slide, please. This is Tenolima, and again, this is, oh, sorry, back up. This is the old Diaz house. There's the old Mandarin restaurant. There's an old beautiful gate here, and this is where the Katrina cottages, ideally, or something along those lines would go. And we did 3. The creek is along here. The blue line is the creek. Next slide, please. This is School Street Plaza, and it was actually the location of the historic middle school in town. What a wonderful... Back a slide.
Jim, can you orient people, give people some key landmarks?
Thank you.
Creek?
Thank you.
I think
Thank
that's
you.
what
Thank you.
we're...
Thank you. Yeah, let's go back to the first one again.
Yeah, we'll go back to the first. He'll give some key landmarks to get everyone oriented.
One more. Sorry, thank you.
Give a minute, just give a minute.
Back up, please. Back up. Back up. Okay. That's Tenolima. Here's the heart of town. Are you with me? There is Bolinas and Broadway, right there, okay? There's the Fairfax Market, going up Sir Francis Drake. There's Tenolima, just past the library. It's the little, what we call Flatiron site, where they have the informal lumber business going on. Okay, we good? Okay, let's go back. Okay, and that's the old school next to the ball field. There's the Bank of America. Go ahead. Next slide. Okay, so during the public meetings in adopting the zoning map and... Okay, so during the public...
Okay, so we're getting clarification on where the church is.
Slide of them.
I want the picture, not
The Lutheran site, okay.
Where do you say the housing is going to be?
Somewhere down towards the bottom of the site.
And
There'll
where
be-
would the parking go?
Each project as it comes in will apply with a set
We
of...
don't know that yet.
Yeah,
That's correct. Could you
Okay.
please hold your comments or questions until the end? That'd be great. Thank you. Jehovah's Witness is right there, and we'll come back to that. Okay? All right, let's move on. I'm sorry if I'm in your way. Okay, during the public hearings, and also the just hearings at the town council, and then in between the, I believe, 3 or 4 public hearings on ordinance 777 adopting the zoning map and the first rung of modifications to the language, we heard a lot of concern. And those concerns were traffic, adequate parking, affordability, appropriate zoning for School Street Plaza, the 20 units per base density applied to the old planned district development parcels, and to the residual 18 acres of the church. Those are good comments. Those are very good comments. And we think we've got a strategy on how to make sure that the 20 units per acre base density, even though those 2 new sites would become planned district development, that the base densities won't apply to the prior planned district development sites, the Cascade condos, or the residual 18 units of the church. In fact, we're not even going to now come in recommending the zoning of the church property to planned district development. We're going to throw in a caveat we're recommending a caveat in the zoning ordinance language for planned district development, which will lead the way for when the developer, the nonprofit developer comes in. They will come in with a general plan amendment, a parcel map application, and a specific plan, or a precise plan in their application. So it'll all get done at once. The The lot will be formed, the zoning designation will apply, and the project will be visible. Okay? Second, also, so it's back. We need to go back. We need to go back. Okay. So PDD. So that's, and then Jehovah Witness property. As we were moving through the process of writing the staff report, which is very detailed when you're passing an ordinance, it lists APN numbers, you know, assessor parcel numbers and whatnot, we realized we had done a mapping, there had been a mapping error. Jehovah's Witness in the land use map was actually over here, I'm going to go over right here. In the zoning map, it was included in the new PDD and also in the general plan map. That was a mapping error. So we'd always tended to come back and correct that. Now, since we're pausing and we're having sort of this moment to take a fresh look, we'll be extracting both all of the church, except for the future 2 acres, and Jehovah Witness, okay? And I'll get to more errors that we've corrected in a moment. So, here's our recommendations. I'm going to try and get out of the way a little bit. First of all, on the whole general plan and the housing elements, there was an analysis done that's required by law under the California Environmental Quality Act that requires you to assess 17, and it might even have grown to 19 aspects of a project. It was passed in the 70s by the state so that you, the public, and policymakers, in a parallel process to what's called the entitlements, applying for a permit, get to see the impacts of a project. There are certain things like schools that are exempt, but for the most part, every project has to go through, unless it's categorically exempt, it has to go through an analysis. And the town did that on the whole general plan and actually on the subsequent amended housing element, because we had to go back and add that prior planning period of 64 in the amended housing element. So there was an analysis done, and as regards to council, we are recommending the council may want to conduct a workshop on Tenalima and School Street regarding parking and affordability processes. And I mentioned also we may be taking another look at, we may be recommending another approach on School Street Plaza. And Mr. Azazi is here today, the owner of School Street Plaza, with his architect that are thinking things over right now. The approach of affordability, as I mentioned, at the senior project, 100% for very low seniors, and Tenalima workforce housing at least 50% affordable. And again, the town can consider increasing affordable restrictions, and also in the central part of town we're going to be talking about next, the town can go beyond the agreement we have with the state. Let's see. So what am I missing here? Amend the general plan zone School Street Plaza to central commercial or a portion of it. Eliminate rezoning of the entire church property I mentioned, which will go back to UR7, which is 1 house per 7 acres. Eliminate rezoning Jehovah Witness to PDD. It was a mapping error. And apply only the 20-unit base density on the 2 parcels, the church and Tenalima. Next slide, please. I'm going to have to speed up a little bit. This is actually the proposed draft language. It's on the board back there, and it fits in a portion of the language of the plan district development within the code, and this is how we think we'll accommodate the specific intention of just zoning those 2 parcels to the base density. Next slide, please. Okay, now I'm going to run through, I'm going to speed up a little bit, converting the highway commercial to central commercial. And the big breakthrough on that with the state was the only difference between highway commercial and central commercial with regards to housing on the 2nd floor is in the highway commercial, you need a conditional use permit. It means you have to jump through a hoop. In the central commercial, the existing central commercial section right now, you do not need a conditional use permit. It's allowed by right. Now, you still have to go through design review. You still have to answer where the parking is going to go. You have to deal with setback issues or any other variances. But housing in the central part of town right now is allowed by right, and all we're doing is extending that right to the old highway commercial bookends of town by rezoning them. And whether or not projects come in or not, we don't know. We hope. Mr. Karkabi, who owns the Fairfax Market property, at one time came in with ground floor retail with housing above. Unfortunately, 2 floors of housing above, which is not allowed by the code, and it was coming from the street back. We'd love it for him to come back in with it turned 90 degrees facing the street. We'll see. But we've targeted the potential of 17 units in this new CC. Next slide, please. Can I back up a second? This is the old good earth to give you a grounding, okay? And that's the Fairfax market. And the Fairfax market does not have to go away to create small buildings fronting Sir Francis Drake, just like the buildings down here, the historic character of town. Next slide, please. This is the Fair and Stone Plaza that has the potential, again, we're zoning the potential, no minimum base density, nothing above 2 floors, 22 units. And then the east side, please. The old eclectic area. The nursery owner has actually expressed interest in possibly offering up that property for infill housing. And there's a lot of old homes along here that have been flipped into commercial spaces. In fact, if you sort of look behind some of the storefronts, the old house is behind. And this is good earth. There's the good earth. Okay? And not unlike the 2 homes across the street from the town hall that were recently offices and now have gone back to housing, we'd like to recommend that those old homes, even the first ground floor homes, be allowed to go back to housing because there's a surplus of commercial properties these days and a lack of housing overall. Next slide, please. So we heard on this some of the same concerns: traffic, adequate parking, affordability. Who would want to live downtown next to music? Proximity to air pollution from roadways, new permits required for second floor resident, no new permits required for second floor permits. So again, there was a CEQA analysis done on the conversion of CH to CC. We're recommending that the council consider creating a parking policy for all the new residential units in the commercial center, central commercial area. And that might include managed parking and or restricted parking for new units. There are some pretty wild things going on in certain areas where I've just heard of a senior project where they asked them to sign that they would not have cars. So again, the town can go beyond its current status quo if it wants to in terms of parking. Let's see, affordability, second floor units in the central commercial area are intended to be small, efficiency units, which by definition are more affordable. It turns out that for developers, building small units, you get more return on your money, but you can offer them at lower rates that are competitive with the market. Small is beautiful. Small is more affordable by definition. So we're hoping that we can motivate folks to build some efficient second floor units that 300, 400, 500 square feet that are efficient. Let's see here. Put my glasses back on. In terms of, and by the way, small second floor residential units in the walkable downtown center area close to transit are part of the historic development pattern of Fairfax. It's Fairfax. It's just what I call healing the scars, the bookends, and going back to historic character and using areas that have already been paved over and that are hardscape. Okay, proximity to roadways. I'm just going to paraphrase this. There's a trade-off. If there's an old joke, if there's 2 things the public can't stand, it's density and sprawl. Well, you gotta decide. We can't keep going with sprawl, and everybody hates density. The word density sounds bad, sounds dense, but in fact, you'd be surprised. I'm trained as an urban designer. I'm trained as both a planner and architect, and a niche in between is urban design. I wish we could have an opportunity to really talk about density sometime, because the old historic center of Sausalito, where I used to be on the planning commission and lived for 20 years, or Old Mill Valley, or Old Fairfax. These are old urban centers that actually used to be linked to streetcars. They were about walking. The car hadn't come along. By the way, before the earthquake of 1906, there were fewer than 1,000 people of European ancestry in Marin County. There's a few Miwoks that probably agree with no growth. So there's a trade-off, and we think that building along the Sir Francis Drake corridor is not like building a wind cup next to the 101 freeway. And there are air filtration systems that can be put in place. There are some building techniques that can be used for vibration and whatnot. So we think it's a good strategy, it's a modest strategy, and it mimics the historic character of town. And finally, we're recommending the council may want to conduct an additional forum workshop to discuss the parking and affordability price policies concerning future second floor residences in the town. Next slide, please. Okay, and finally, what the housing element in the general plan, actually the general plan does, is it redesignates where we are right now, the park, town hall, the fire station, the pavilion, the ballpark, and the library, which are publicly owned properties, but have these old antiquated zoning tags of residential, we're rezoning them to a new category called public domain. And as I mentioned, that will also accommodate emergency shelter for the homeless. Next slide, please. Oh, and by the way, back up just a second. Of the 68 parcels we're rezoning, 24 of them are the public domain reclassification, okay? So 44 parcels is what we're rezoning, basically, to accommodate the housing. Next slide, please. So this is the existing zoning map with the existing labels. And again, zoning, every property in town is within a zone, and there's a town code book. It's the big blue book over there in the corner. That's the town code. Section 17 is the zoning ordinance. Each one of these abbreviated categories has all this language in it. And again, it's the map and that language that needs to comply with the adopted general plan by law. So this shows the sites that we were going to intervene, and this is the old map, the existing map. That's it, okay? And of course, now we're not going to include the entire church. We're not going to include the mapping error of Jehovah Witness, and we may change the recommended rezoning of School Street. But let's go to the next slide, which is actually what 778. Same properties, now with the different labels, okay? And again, that will disappear, but there'll be a little, eventually, 2-acre site there. So back up a second. Again, approximately 68 parcels are highlighted that are targeted for rezoning in 778. Now, why did I say approximate? Isn't it exactly something? Well, actually, last week we found that in the east side commercial, those little homes along the road as you come up to the intersection to go left into Good Earth, the county had merged 3 parcels. Through 3 different parcels merged with neighboring parcels. So we went from 6 to 3. So it's a moving target. We don't always get told which parcels are merging, but our best count at this moment in time is 68 parcels. Next slide, please. Okay, now, during the public hearings, in addition to finding out that there had been a mapping error on Jehovah's Witness, we were very grateful to find out we had some math errors and some classification errors. For example, this line right here said R2, R3, and planned unit development. We don't have such, so we redacted that. This is the big bad UR7, UR10. That's UR7 means 1 house per 7 acres. UR10 means 1 house per 10 acres. Okay, and I'll come back to that in a second. And then we found a couple other errors here. This should have been our S5.5 to 7 instead of RD. And over here, it's a typo of 8 to 14 units should read, 8 to 14 should read 7 to 12. Okay, next slide, please. This is the second table where we found the same mistake, the math error in R7, UR7, UR10. Next slide, please. And then finally, we had the same math error on all these APN numbers, okay? And you might have heard the allegations that we had rezoned the Wall property, 99-acre beautiful open space Wall property, and more recently, Sky Ranch. This is the genesis of where that thought came from. But I would like to point out, look at these 3 APNs right here. Those are the Wall property, adding up to 99 acres. The zoning didn't change. The outcome in the number of units, you're only going to get 6 on the 68. It's 1 per 10 units. You're only going to get 2 on the 18, approximately, and that's giving a little. And you're only going to get 1 on the 11. So the outcome, 9 units on the Wall property, even though this math error was there, the intent was not to change the zoning on the Wall property or Sky Ranch. So we made these errata changes. Again, we're grateful that this was pointed out to us. We're grateful. And we want more errors pointed out to us. And in fact, we introduced this to the council in May, at the May meeting, in a formal staff report with this attached. But we're going to take the extra step when we come back in for these, the zoning ordinance amendment and the zoning map adoption. We're going to make these formal amendments to the general plan. So nobody can be confused that our intent is not to rezone the Wall property and not to rezone Sky Ranch or other URs or U10. So if you have to take away 2 points from this presentation today, I would just like to iterate.
Where's the Wall property?
Behind the church. Yes, St. Rita's, okay? If you had to take away 2 points today, it's that the general plan housing element planned for 124 124 units. 62, what I call upstream, up the canyon, up Ross Valley, 40 at the church and 22 at Tenalima. 62 there, and counting School Street Plaza, 62 in the new central, central commercial part of town, and or 9 at School Street Plaza. 62, 62. Not hundreds of units, 124 zoning for the possibility, not hundreds of parcels rezoned, 68. Next slide, please. Summary of proposed future actions. Only rezone the 2 acres at the church, and it's 100% affordable. Amend the general plan and keep existing zoning for the remainder 18 acres of the church. Not rezone Jehovah Witness. Amend the general plan so School Street Plaza goes to CC, or approximately half. Include language in the zoning ordinance as we bring in the changes on the map. If council chooses to repeal Ordinance 778 next Wednesday, it's been expressed by staff at many meetings that the game plan is to come back in steps, come back in with rezoning those targeted parcels for planned district development as a first step, with the corresponding language already been thought out in the zoning ordinance text. Same for going from CH to CC, so that the people in the community don't think they're going to get left behind if the map changes their zoning, but they're not covered in the language in the new zoning designation. There was a, for example, there was a vet up there to the west of Fairfax Market, and veterinarian uses are not allowed in central commercial where they're allowed in highway commercial. So he's saying, well, if you rezone me, how can I expand? We said, well, we're going to change the language so you exist. You're okay. So now we want to do that ahead of time so everybody's got a comfort level. Let's see. And then amend the general plan to reflect the errata corrections, as I just mentioned, and those are on the back wall over here. And schedule special council workshop forums to discuss the proposed zoning for Tenalima site and the conversion of CH parcels to CC to allow second floor residentials in the town center. And I would also add that for both those areas, the future forums could address, parking, coming up with a managed parking policy or what have you. So that's it. There is language in the housing element, which is, I believe, state required, Larry, that under certain circumstances we have to entertain density bonuses, but it's not a done deal. It's discretionary on the town's part, and but it is in the housing element. Yes, and I guess are we going to do the free flow? Or?
We're going to use the microphone.
Okay.
For the comments and questions.
Okay.
So, and we have a very crowded room here, and we are going to do our best to make sure as many people as possible get a chance to speak. So we will have, let's see, may I have that microphone, Jim? This one works, so this one's a little bit louder. So we'll be starting over here. And so I want maybe 5 or 7 people lined up. There's no reason that you have to stand the whole time. So we'll get 5 or 7 people lined up. We'll have a few go through. You can join, but then that way you can sit in your chair, see the slides, and listen to the answers. So with that, we're going to get started. If you have a question, we have Jim, Garrett, and Larry who will do their best to answer it. And if you just have a general comment on something that you've heard or what's been presented, we have a clock and we're asking people to limit themselves to 2 minutes. Also, please, because of the video streaming, it only picks up what's in this microphone. So we will need you to be up here. And we have a lot of people that we're going to hear from, a lot of different opinions. So let's just respect what we hear from each other today. So if you would like to introduce yourself and share where you're from, we'd appreciate that, but it's not required. So you'll be our first speaker. Please, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Carl Deal, and I live in Fairfax. And I just want to address one little aspect, which is transportation, because what I'm getting from people is that they're really, really worried about the densities and the congestion on Sir Francis Drake, and that's part of their concern in addressing this whole question of housing, affordable housing, and density. And speaking as a senior, and somebody who does own 2 cars, or in a family there are 2, I just want to use a couple of props to reassure some people that yes, it is possible to live largely without cars. And My first prop is this item here that some of you may not be familiar with. This, for those of you who have never seen one before, this is a bus schedule. And people make comments like, we're very badly served here in Fairfax, I can't possibly use the bus system. Well, this little prop can actually address that concern for you, because if you flip through it, you'll notice that at some commute hours, we get as many as 12 buses an hour. By my arithmetic, that is a bus every 5 minutes. I happen to take a bus almost every day, and I did when I was working as well. And you know what? Those buses are actually very uncrowded at this end of town, underused, and they're very usable. So when somebody says, oh, we can put some senior housing there and not have parking spaces, you know what? I have a little other prop here in my, somewhere back in here. This is a senior bus card, right? 50% off. You can go to San Francisco for under $250 with this thing. Go all over, anywhere in the county for $1. That's amazing. You don't have to have that car, at least you don't have to use it. And I came here today not parking my car on this street, which has no parking, but like some of you, some other people here, another little prop, a bicycle helmet. And some of you say, well, I can't possibly take my groceries, I can't run around and do things. Well, I have a little bike parked out there that has a little motor on it. And I need it because I had a little event going up that big hill I live up. And you know what? I can take that bag of soil that my wife wants for her plants on the back of that bike. So these two little props could help address that concern, or at least I hope it will. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, and if we, I'll have our next speaker.
Hi, my name is Valerie Hood. I live at 79 Dominga in Fairfax. From what I understand, it's illegal to make the changes that Jim has indicated today. The so-called errata that were pointed out by Frank Egger and not noticed today, again, as usual, Frank Egger is the one who pointed out those mistakes. I'd like to also thank our planning director for helping me to clarify my thoughts today. A cruel hoax is being perpetuated on the Fairfax community. Ordinance number 778 does not provide for truly affordable housing or any affordable housing and sets aside for set-asides for Fairfax residents. That's illegal. Also, small is beautiful. I wonder what size your home is, Jim. Also, it's actually not a choice between density and sprawl. It's a choice between approving the referendum or placing the rezoning of most of our town up to a vote for the Fairfax residents. I support the referendum, for which I helped to gather the over 1,000 voter signatures in less than 2 weeks, and I'm here today to speak in support of honoring that and maintaining the last council vote taken to uphold the repeal of ordinance number 778, a plan riddled with mistakes and incomplete document that would provide a windfall to property owners and potential developers of nearly every major Fairfax property without having to submit any architectural plans. And I'm not talking about the ones that the town afforded, I'm talking about the actual people that own the property. That's what makes it real. Okay, so there are also no provisions for water, parking, emergency evacuation, and infrastructure such as classroom space, etc., along the Sir Francis Drake corridor. All the other towns in Marin have had such plans backdoored on them by their planning departments. Think of Wynkoop and the recently defeated Larkspur Landing plan, where the citizens demanded that staff responsible for pushing the density be held accountable and fired. It was unanimous. They turned down that plan once they actually looked at it. Fairfax should do the same. ABAG and other pro-development groups cannot be allowed to dictate to Fairfax. The same collusion appears to have taken place among some members of staff in Fairfax. The two council members that supported approving this faulty plan were Renee Goddard and David Weinstock, and this action will not be forgotten in the next election cycle.
And before our next speaker starts, when you have about 20 seconds left, I'll just give you a little signal so that you know you have 20 seconds to wrap up your remarks. Our next speaker.
I think I can manage this. I'm Marianne Majori. I'm a former mayor of Fairfax. I was a commissioner on the Planning Commission. I was on the Transportation Authority of Marin. I am the founder of the new Affordable Housing Committee, and I'm here today to say that This is a real opportunity for us to be positive. We're frightened sometimes and we want to be negative, but this is a real opportunity for us to be positive. So here it goes. When I started the new Affordable Housing Commission, the reason I did that was because neither my children nor your children could ever live here. And that was the first thing on my mind. My children live in Los Angeles and New York City, and that's where they can afford to live. I was also concerned that we wouldn't have a coach for the baseball team, a head of the choir and the church. We can't just have us all growing older and older and older and no new people. And that is what affordable housing means to me. It means youth. It means artistry. It means musicians. When I was mayor, we approved a mission statement that was people, nature, culture. And that's what this affordable housing opportunity, the housing opportunity affords us. I want to just say that the state is not just going to let us glide by and not pay attention to what is basically law. And the other thing is that the original general plan that we are working on now, on the housing element that was taken back by the last meetings a couple of weeks ago, is actually a beautiful document worked on by so many people and so much brilliance. It's so literate, it's so well thought out, it took so many years. So let's adjust it as our leadership is telling us, but also let's look at what it has to offer here. And let's make sure that we have youth, that we have artists, we have musicians, that we have bicycle riders, and that is the essence of what Fairfax is about. People, nature, culture. We can do this without becoming misaligned and getting hysterical, okay? Because we need a varied culture, and that is what we're trying to do with this general plan. Keep the old one, adjust it, and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Hi, my name is John. I live in Fairfax. I've been here for 4 years. I grew up in San Francisco, born and raised, and I've seen this happen. Work, live space, you know, all this talk of like housing, and there's no affordable housing that I can see. I mean, there's no guarantee that it's affordable. Affordable to who? These types of things. Not to mention that, you know, state mandate is preempting, you know, municipalities. That aside, it's really. I think the traffic thing is huge. It's really. I mean, there's so much traffic. I think we all know, and to say that people are going to ride their bikes. I mean, you can't stop people from buying cars. There's just simply going to be a lot more traffic, a lot more. I mean, I think to think otherwise is kind of foolish. But I mean, I think the infrastructure we have along this corridor just won't handle these proposed buildings. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And our next speaker.
Hello, I'm Jessica Green. I live here in Fairfax. And, you know, what artists and musicians do you know can afford $40,000 a year, which some of these affordable housing, we don't know exactly how much they're charging for these affordable housing. Can they really afford? And the only person I know that's read this whole ordinance was Frank Egger, and he said there's no mention of affordable housing anywhere in that ordinance. Now, I don't know how many people in here have read that whole ordinance. Okay.
So we have an indication of a show of hands of several people.
Well, I've heard that I'm right from some people, and Frank Egger was the one that caught all these mistakes. Who made the mistakes? I mean, somebody had to do that, and why did they do that? And they're making us very dense. They've miscategorized Marin County as far as density goes to be way more than we're supposed to be. And I'm all for affordable housing, but really affordable housing that poor people can afford, the workforce, because the workforce really can't afford those kind of prices. And why they're putting, you know, that bill through to try to change our category of how we're categorized here in Marin, so that maybe we won't have to be so dense according to them that's pushing it on us. But we should have affordable housing that people really can afford. And I think that we do need to repeal this ordinance that we collected 1,000 signatures for. And then go over each project as they come and approve them as long as they really are affordable, because I don't think we need more high-cost housing here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, I'm Lynn Corwin, and I can really see that the time that you all took to do this and the care that you wanted to bring to this, and I have several questions about it. The first thing is that the town council did adopt the amendment to mitigate the negative declaration for Ordinance 778 so that environmental input report was not required. Is that right?
And let me, Garrett, would you like to answer that, or Jim?
Larry? Okay.
Say that last part again.
That the town council adopted to mitigate the negative declaration for Ordinance 778 so that an environmental impact report was not required.
Actually, the original general plan with the housing element at that time went through the CEQA process, which starts with what's called an initial study, okay? And the initial study analyzes what I think was 17 and now is 19 pieces of potential impact. And it's a checklist, and you have to determine whether the impact in any one of these categories, air quality, transportation, is significant enough to where you have to do something to reduce its impact. If you can identify what's called mitigation measures to bring those impacts down to less than significant, then you create what's called a mitigated negative declaration. So the CEQA process is tiered. You're either exempt by statutory classification, or you have to go through what's called the initial study with this checklist, and you determine in that checklist if there's any impacts of those categories. And if there are, you have to be able to mitigate them to less than significant, or then you do an EIR.
So what?
Let me finish. The town conducted an initial study, created mitigations for the impacts of the whole general plan, including the housing element, and it was passed, approved, at the same time that the entire general plan was adopted in April, on April 4th of 2012. Then the state rejected our housing element, said, oh no, you didn't do the prior arena. You've got to do 64 on top of the 108. So we went back, we modeled the additional 64 units, and then we had the same consultants go through that did our initial study, mitigated neg deck, and we said we want to know if there's any impacts from the additional 64 units on top of the 108 that we modeled before, whether there are any impacts that can't be mitigated to less than significant. And it turns out there were none. There were no additional impacts. Like
you're telling me that 170.
Just and that analysis, the original analysis, is a very detailed study. You can find it on the archived meetings of the Town Council for April 4th, 2012. It's a detail. It shows all the intersections, turning radiuses, volumes. It is now back to 2012. Here we are in 2014. But as recently as last fall, when the amended housing element was coming through to meet the state's requirements, we had the traffic analysis looked at, and we had the air quality looked at to make sure there was, from the increased number, nothing that tipped us over to less than significant with mitigations. And it was the opinion of learned professionals that it didn't create any intersections that go down to a level F, which is not allowable. So there was a CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, analysis done on the original general plan and on the subsequent amended housing element. And both are covered with the initial study and the mitigated neg deck.
Okay. So was this done because there were seen as there were not going to be any cars coming into with these additional housing?
No, it modeled the estimated number of cars based on the categories of use, and they take those numbers and they run the analysis at each intersection. It's a very elaborate process.
Okay. And I just have one more question about that. if you don't, if we take the mitigated negative declaration, and somebody else, a builder wants to come in and build, they are not required to do an environmental impact report, is that correct?
Not on these specific 124 units at these specific locations.
So no negative impact report, no environmental impact report
It's been done.
is needed?
It's been done.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. Just want that to be clear. Okay. And then the next thing I know is about 30 seconds. Well, he was talking most of the time. All right. The other thing is that I know that Larkspur wanted to have a place for their workers to, they built a place for their workers to live, and they were sued for discrimination because they couldn't, they have Creekside was built for Larkspur's employees, and they were sued because they could not be restricted to the current residents employed there. And I wanted to know what you wanted to do about that, because I think it's a good idea to have this.
Okay, so with the senior housing project, it is true that certain funding sources come with restrictions, that you can't restrict it to targeted local population. That's true. It doesn't mean that local population won't be able to get on the list and be accommodated in those units. But it is true that, can you hear me? Sorry. It is true that certain funding monies come with restrictions on who you can restrict the benefit to, okay? For example, I believe the church project, with these funds coming in, cannot say only Fairfax people can live there.
No, actually, a company from Berkeley will be deciding who lives there.
So, so now I've lost my train of thought. Okay, so with 10 Olima, actually, let me just see, go try to think. With 10 Olima, Mr. Weinseidler is doing this project at this point with his own funds. So there'll be no restrictions. And as a private property owner, he has the right to rent to who he wants.
Good.
And again, this town, if Mr. Weinseidler, we hope, comes in with an application for a project, the town will be able to look at the design, through design review, be able to look at the parking, make sure it's adequate, and any other variances that are applied for, and actually could impose upon him income restrictions if it so chose. And we could go beyond that with those two sites, which are targeted now for actual affordable housing, and they've been classified in this presentation, I might add. We could go beyond that with the new upstairs second units in the town center, and the same with parking restrictions. The town can go beyond that.
Okay.
Sorry. The town can go beyond the agreements in the zoning in this with the new central commercial second floor units. It could have parking restrictions on occupants. It could have affordability restrictions. And lastly, those again, like 10 Olima or School Street Plaza for that matter, would be coming in for applications, and the town can go beyond what it's agreed with the state. The town can impose further affordability restrictions to make sure that the town receives a certain amount of affordable units at certain thresholds. It's within the town's purview to go beyond what it's agreed with the state. But again, I thought we'd done a pretty thorough job of explaining we're blessed that the senior housing project is targeted for 100% affordable. This isn't make-believe. At 30 to 50% the area median income. And the property owner, 10 Olima, has volunteered that half of the 22 units would be affordable at 50 to 30% the area median income. These are not, this is not made up. This is not a conspiracy. This is real. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Our next commenter. And again, you may have noticed Garrett does stop the clock while the speakers are responding to the question. So please go ahead.
Cindy Swift, Fairfax. I've read the general plan and the amended housing element, and I'll have more questions and comments that I'll send in because of the time. But one of the questions that wasn't answered today was, with the state's requirements, ABAG's requirements, what happens to the town if we don't meet those numbers? That, or you could wait till I'm done, whichever way. Okay.
Give us all your questions.
Okay. Second question, PDD. In the land use element, it describes the parking requirements for PDD as 1 space for studios, 2 spaces for anything above that, plus 1 guest space per unit. But when I read through the housing element, it seems pretty fuzzy. So I want a clarification on parking for PDDs. Okay. Tenalima. Now that is identified as workforce housing. So workforce housing in the general plan is, I think, 60 to 180% of the average median income. So it sounds like there's already an application pending. That was in the general plan, and the housing element is written in there as well, that there is an application pending. So it sounds like from today that on the board that half of those units may be 30 to 50% of the median income. It sounds like the rest of those units, it's unclear. They could be market rate or fall within workforce. So it seems that how we identify that as workforce housing may not, in fact, fall under what we define in the general plan as workforce housing. Okay, the maps in the general plan are unreadable. You can't, even if I brought them up on the electronic version, I can't read them. Is it feasible for the town to provide larger copies so that we can have those and take those home?
So your time is up.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Cindy, thank you. We've been in communication via email, and I'll have to go back. I'll have to go back and data mine in the land use element. I don't remember on my mental map the distinguishing the statement you made about it qualifying the parking in plan district development in the land use element. I don't remember that. I'll have to go back and look at that. Okay, I'll look at it tonight. Okay, I need to go back and look at the land use element with regards to what she's referencing and how that syncs with what is actually, there are no requirements in the plan district development language in the town code that I know of for those classifications. The plan district development is set up sort of with a 3-step process, a preliminary plan, a master plan, and a precise plan, and all that's determined through that process. But I would love to sit down with you. Can you give me the other two?
So the first question she asked was, what happens if you don't meet the requirements?
Right. So the state requires us to zone to allow it to happen. We don't have to make it happen. We do, in the next housing element, have to go back and explain how successful these approaches were in actually allowing the projects to occur. But there's no penalty if none of this is built. We're required to zone for the housing. We're not required to do the housing. Having said that, up until just recently, we have been very proactive working with the church and Tenalima to try to help line up funding sources and a reasonable approach on affordability for Tenalima. And we're gun-ho to make it happen. And your issues about what is workforce housing, it is a very nebulous targeted population. And here again, Mr. Weinseidler has agreed to make half the units affordable, and I'm hoping that the whole project is small units, which again, by definition, is more affordable. And there's an economy of scale for a developer to build that product when it's more desirable and it'd be below market rates, but actually more return on money for the developer. And by the way, those units actually pay their taxes.
Okay.
Yes.
And did you clarify the parking requirements on the PDD?
Again, I do not know in the actual language of the zoning ordinance, I am not aware of any parking requirements. It's supposed to be worked out on an application basis. And we may have language in there about application pending. When I shook my head, no, we do not have any applications submitted. When you say pending, I'm thinking going through the process. We hope we get applications in on these projects. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're going to go to our next commenter. Thank you for your questions. Yes, sir. Oh, wrong direction. No, I'm just making it a little challenging. There you go.
Thank you. Hi, I'm John Sargent. I'm a resident of Fairfax. I'd like you folks not to be fooled by all this alleged planning expertise, specifically ABAG. ABAG, I believe, has no statutory authority, as Jim just said, to force us to do anything. The reality is they dangled out $300,000 as the carrot, And then we plan to do that by improving the parkade? I don't think so. I don't think so. Now, there was a recent lawsuit with the Sierra Club and Earth Justice about some of the stuff ABAG was trying over in the East Bay. And they settled out of court, but I've given the settlement to council people. And in essence, what they said is ABAG didn't consider the environmental impacts that these developments were going to have. And I believe that with the allocation they've given us, they definitely haven't considered the environmental impact. Okay. Now, this planning process and all these meetings that went on for years, that's all fine and dandy. The trouble is, it was a small group of people talking to another small group of people, and they all agreed. When the general Fairfax population found out about it, in 14 days, they gathered over 1,000 signatures saying, we don't want this, and that's what that referendum's all about, to stop this process in its tracks, okay? Okay. My main concern is this. All this stuff about we're going to accommodate traffic and parking spaces, I think is a bunch of bullshit. I'm sorry. They're not going to be able to accommodate it. Parking, if you tried to get out of this town during school hours and commute times, pretty tough to get out, isn't it? Now, I checked with I'll wrap it up in just 10 seconds. Transportation Authority informs me they can't provide extra transportation until these things are built. And finally, I probably could go along with the church project if that was all there was. Unfortunately, that's just the beginning. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker.
Good afternoon. I'm Colin Russell. I have been a Marin resident for 30 years and an affordable housing advocate for 20. Like the former mayor, I have 2 grown sons who cannot afford to live in this county. One lives in Santa Rosa, the other lives at home. If he could afford to rent a place here, I'd have him out in 5 days. Not that I don't love him. I think we have to decide what kind of a community we want to be. Do we want to be a community that extends a hand to our elders and to people who are less fortunate than ourselves and help them live in this community, the one that we love? I think we should. This proposal does not propose anything massive. Rescinding the ordinance is not necessary to address the public's concerns. Rescinding the ordinance puts the town at risk of legal action by being out of compliance with its housing element in the general plan. It puts the proposed senior housing plan at risk. It puts us at risk from formula store applications. It's been thoroughly vetted over many, many years by people who really do care and really have the interests of the community at heart. So I would like to propose that we continue the first reading of the repeal to the July 16th special meeting so that all of the issues from errors to policy can be flushed out at the town forum and errors corrected before they address the repeal. Ask the council to articulate by vote what the path forward would be if it votes to take a step back. We need more housing workshops. One is not enough. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker.
Yvette Wakefield, 23 Alhambra, Fairfax. I want to say 3 things about this. One, I am a senior in need of affordable housing. I had a very nice home for 8 years here in Fairfax that was affordable for me. And my rent was $1,300 a month, and the landlords raised it by $450 to $1,750 a month, and I could not stay there for that reason. And many, many people have had the same thing happen to them, and I would like to ask all of you homeowners what you would do if suddenly your mortgage were increased by 30% a month. How would you live? Where would you go? I only have a roof over my head because of the kindness of someone who is renting to me here in Fairfax. I came very close to having to live in my car. Now, this isn't about affordable housing. The proposed housing at the Christ Lutheran Church according to the Marin IJ, is going to be for people with incomes between 22 something and 40,000 a year. I don't qualify. I make under 10,000 a year. There is nothing for those who are most in need. The most in need are those with the lowest income. In addition, no housing should be built there in the first place because it's unhealthy. If the air is poisoned that you breathe, if the water that you drink is poisoned, if the soil that your food grows in is poisoned, we are poisoned. And that is what has been happening to our environment all over the world. And the more development there is, the more pollution there is going to be. Unhealthy living conditions. No, I'm not done. So, what is this? Okay. Has been shown the most, okay, this on Sir Francis Drake. It's been shown to be the most unhealthy housing as the rates of leukemia, asthma, cancer, and autism, as well as other modern diseases, increase exponentially, and the costs would be borne by those least able to afford them. We need healthy housing. I propose we have rent control. I'm starting petitions to have a moratorium on rent increases for 1 year in Fairfax. I want our town council to address this matter. Had there been rent control, I would still be in my home.
Okay, thank you for your comment. And my next question or commenter?
Jane Richardson Mack. I live at 49 Madrone Road in Fairfax. I've lived there since 1980, and I know we have no legal responsibility to say our name and address. I propose, and I'm glad everybody's been very forthcoming. I think we have a moral responsibility to identify ourselves in some way, shape, or form. Someone else once said at another meeting that the plan, whatever, the county plan, I don't even know what its name is, but the thing that we are going to amend to allow for this to happen. The general plan, right, because it was from the 70s, the Nixon era, and it was old hat and needed to be redone. If that's the thinking, then the Constitution and a number of other documents that our country is founded on would need to be regularly, adjusted to accommodate for whatever's going on. I think this, I don't mean to be insulting, but it is rather a bit of a wolf in sheep's clothing. The wolf being there's money to be made. People don't do these things to lose money. Affordable housing isn't a money-making proposition as far as I can figure out. Affordable housing probably needs to be addressed as a separate issue. We desperately need it, it's true. This isn't going to do it. As far as I know, I don't think that this 778 itself actually spells out exactly what affordable housing is or that there is going to be. I think we're all delusional if you think your children and your parents, we seniors, are going to be able to live in these units. We can't. They can't say it's only for us. It's up for grabs. Who's going to be managing these places? I'm about done. I just say don't do this. Take it one step at a time. Too many things all crowded into one thing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your comment. We have more people lined up. Are you next? Yes, please come to the microphone.
Hi, my name is Roberta. Lower. My name is Roberta Anthes, and I'm from Fairfax, 2 Snowden Lane. Hi, my name is Roberta Anthes, and I'm from Fairfax, 2 Snowden Lane. I'm for any and all additional units being built in Fairfax to be affordable or for seniors, all of them. I saw some changes in the general plan. Today I heard about them, and in the rezoning portion of that. And those changes make me even prouder of the people who signed the referendum, who gave the input and the impetus for this committee to make those changes. So without that referendum, I think it's pretty clear that we would not have had any changes. So thank you for all the people who did that. But the referendum has been certified, and it's still in effect. And the referendum is to rescind Ordinance 778. It doesn't really discuss the changes that were spoken about today. And I think legally we have to deal with the referendum first. As 778 is right now, I don't think it should pass. I think we should rescind it. I'm very concerned that a CEQA study has already been done, and it seems to absolve any future building projects on an individual basis. These builders don't have to go through CEQA, or at least that's the way it sounds to me. In addition, if you rezone with specific numbers of units, builders have the potential then to sue. If they win a bid to develop on a certain parcel, they have the option then, okay, to sue. And I think Fairfax puts itself in a very vulnerable position if we rezone in the way that we have and open ourselves up for lawsuits. Right now, rezoning today might limit our control tomorrow. So thank you.
Thanks for your comment. And my next speaker, please take the mic.
Hello, my name is Eric Sohn, and I'm here as the chair of the Board of Trustees of Cascade Canyon School. Cascade Canyon, as you know or may know, leases the site from the Christ Lutheran Church. I came in today and I saw this board back here, and it kind of reminded me of what our concern is. There's a red circle showing that potential 2 acres that was on one of the slides as well. And our concern is that our buildings are within that red circle. And we have not yet been able to get a definitive description or plans or drawings of where exactly that 2 acres is, how it's going to impact us during construction, after construction. And we've gotten involved in the past few months. We've been accused by some of NIMBYism, which I take issue with. NIMBYism is being concerned that something in your neighborhood is going to impact you. This proposed project is more than in our neighborhood. It's our buildings. It's where our kids go to school. I'm not up here to argue against the project, because we're not against the project, but I think it's important that the school is on the radar during the discussion and that people understand that there's about 50 local families who have kids that go to school at the CLC site. Again, once we see the plans and we're reassured that that our interests are going to be protected and our kids' interests are going to be protected, I can see us getting on board. We have a great relationship with our landlord. We don't look to change that. So I would just ask that the school be included in the conversation. And I guess I'd close with a question regarding the reapplication for zoning by the church, if that's the direction it goes. Will they be required with that application to provide plans and details on the footprint of the project? Yeah.
So I'm going to, Jim, would you like to field his question?
Yes, all good questions, and I think you're fairly recent to the board, right? And we had, no? Okay, forgive me. We had, in the early site capacity studies that were done about 4 years ago, we had Becky from the school there, and we had representatives from the church there, and we looked at some what-ifs, and the details do remain to be played out between the chosen nonprofit developer and the church as the landlord, and Cascade Canyon School as the tenant, major tenant. In the in the site capacity studies that we did, we actually modeled an expansion of the school. One scenario was at one floor moving towards the roadway and obviously, back into the site. Another was setting a second floor on the school. So we actually planned in those site capacity studies to test the idea for a school expansion. It's my understanding there was a bit of a breakdown in communication when the church lost its pastor, and there was sort of a leaderless situation going on, and the Resources for Community Development was trying to figure out who do they communicate with the church, and meanwhile the church, just before the pastor left, cut a new lease with the school, which gives the school basically carte blanche control over the whole property. So now RCD, Resources for Community Development, is going, oh, aha, we have to negotiate first with the school as the holder of the lease that controls the site in concert with the church. So this is all coming forward. In fact, again, it's not our role to do the project. It's not our role to make it happen. We review it as the Planning Commission and the Town Council. Having said that, we've tried to go out of our way to help to grease the skids, and I've been directed to put together a meeting with the church, the school, and RCD in the near future to start to hammer out where they're headed in their footprint and the particulars of parking, circulation, all that. So you're absolutely right. It's got to come in. It will, and that's all hopefully going to happen with you all in a collaborative fashion before it gets to hard line coming in for a permit application to the Planning Commission.
Is that hopefully, or is that will happen?
Well, if the church and RCD expect to get something done, I would say since you hold the lease, they better sit down with you.
Thanks for your comment. Question. Our next speaker is. Yes, please go ahead.
Hello, I'm Scott Gibbons. I'm not a polished speaker nor a bureaucrat. I'm an artist. I think this is a disaster. And thank you. And for a number of reasons, I feel this. My name is Scott Gibbons. I'm a resident and I work in Fairfax. And I feel that this is a disaster. Going into it, there's many things that are not being observed, such as, I'll be very brief. Do we really need this? And who's going to profit? Look at the Oakland Hills fire. Who came in after the rebuild? It was people from Georgia, Alabama, people who had never built on a hill before. And some of this building will be on hills. It is falling apart. Is Sir Francis Drake, is it a roadway that can handle this? Or do 2 more lanes need to be blasted out on either side to accommodate the contractors, the concrete trucks, and the ensuing traffic? This bottom line is, do we need it? And will we, at a point, be saying, what have we done? Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. And our next speaker, will have Garrett reset the clock.
Mallory Guidheim, Fairfax. It's okay, thanks. I have some questions. So we're talking about affordable housing, but I don't hear how affordable is the housing. In theory, this is really beautiful. There's live workspaces, there's affordable housing, there's live workspaces and affordable housing, and there are, but the truth is, I don't think any of this is really affordable housing. And I would like to know how much these affordable houses are going to sell for. Because the people that you want to attract who can really need affordable housing, I think they're going to be out of this loop. You say there are 100 and what, 200 units or 140 units? That's a lot more cars than 140 cars. And it's a lot more people than 140 people. There'll probably be 3 to something average people in these in these environments. You say you're committed to have live workspaces, and again, that's really great in theory, and I don't think that that is going to happen. I think they're going to be live spaces the way all lofts end up being. And not for the artists, and not for really the people that it can afford it, unless somebody's really being a watchdog. And speaking about watchdog, you're selling a good thing here the way you're selling it, but I don't think the facts are going to support it. I think we're doing it for $300,000. Maybe that's a big motivator here. But I think it's going to not be worth it ultimately when we don't have space and we don't have room. What? Okay. So, okay, hold on a sec. Talking about the state being a watchdog, this has been on the books for a long time. I don't think the state does intervene. I think we just do what we do, and I don't think they ever send anybody to watch us anyway. Okay.
Thank you for your comments. There was a question about the price of the units.
At this point, the senior housing project is not for selling the units. It's for bringing on seniors at restricted incomes. Tenalima, we don't have any project description or application in on that project yet, but the town, during the application process, at both the Planning Commission and the Town Council level, can entertain restrictions at certain affordability units Again, it's my understanding from the property owner at this point, he's willing to do 50% of the 22 units at 30 to 50% the area median income. So what does that mean again? It was on that chart in the back what the different affordability levels are. The average median income in the county is about 103,000, so 30% of 103 is about 30 some odd $1,000. But let me read you with regard to the church project, okay? Because there's been a lot of people saying that none of this is affordable, that this is all make-believe. So let me read you a note from the project manager in Berkeley and Resources Community Development, who could not be here today. The apartments will be restricted to residents with incomes that are no more than 30 to 50% of the area median income. No more. That's abbreviated AMI. The proposed affordability levels are 4 apartments at 30%. That would be someone making up to $24,000. 4 at 40%. That's making $33,000 a year. 31 at 50%. That's $40,000 a year. Rents will be set at no more than 30% of the income levels served, which translates to $557 for an apartment targeted at 30% AMI, $791 for an apartment targeted at 40% AMI, and $951 per month for an apartment targeted at 50% AMI. In order to serve residents with even more limited incomes, Yvette, are you listening? I'm listening. Okay. In order to serve residents with even more limited incomes in a portion of the apartments, we will be seeking a long-term commitment of rental housing assistance, that means project-based Section 8, from Marin Housing. The project-based Section 8 portion will enable residents to pay just 30% of whatever their actual income is, while providing the property enough income to cover the cost to maintain, operate, offer resident services, and cover mortgage payment for the development. I hope this helps.
Thank you for that clarification, Jim. Our next commenter.
Thank you. I'm Jean Ida, and I live in Fairfax, and I'm on the council of the church. And Jim just basically said everything I was going to say, except that RCD, the community developer, does have a track record. And I actually Googled them last week, and you can see that they have affordable housing units where all of the apartments, with the exception of the property manager, are affordable. So I think that's, we can do research, you can do research on them. The other thing is that there's been some questions about whether the affordable housing will then become market rate housing. The funding that they apply for comes with regulatory agreements that are recorded against the land and are monitored on a regular basis for compliance with eligibility and rent requirements, so the rent can't go up. I mean, the rent can go up, but the affordability can't disappear.
Thank you for that information. Our next speaker.
Hi, I'm Mimi Newton, and I live in Fairfax. I'm one of the members of the General Plan Implementation Committee, and I'm chair of the Open Space Committee. And I was going to ask if whoever is manning the slide, maybe Garrett, could you show the previous slide which depicted the next steps? You know, I'm really concerned that this community is pitted housing advocates against, you know, lower density advocates, and that's really not what this is about. This is about fixing problems with a plan that has been thoughtfully crafted to fit the character of our town. What has been explained, and just an answer to the question about what is affordable, is either not being understood by everybody or is being ignored, because the housing element does spell out what is extremely low income, very low income, and moderate income, and it includes, you know, and I think the numbers Jim just went through explain that. So, you know, what we're hearing is that the Lutheran Church would have 100% extremely low or very low, and potentially the Mandarin Gardens at 50% low income, which, frankly, I think, if you're paying 500 something a month rent in Marin, that's that for somebody with a very low income, which is going to be extremely low income is less than $30,900. That's your income. So your rent is going to be $500 or so. The repeal of the ordinance and the going back through one piece at a time makes a lot of sense. I disagree with Mr. Sargent. This is not about stopping a process, but fixing errors, and I hope we can do that.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter in line. Who's next? Have we run out of commenters or no? Okay. Okay, you want to go next?
Yo, George.
Okay, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dave Smadbeck. I live at 23 Broadway in Fairfax. In my past, I currently serve on the Marin Housing Authority Low-Income Loan Committee. So I know a little bit about low-income needs and how it's governed. I've also been a project coordinator for Rebuilding Together, which was a great project that was here and is not here anymore. I'd love to see it revived. And I see a lot of things. I'm also a realtor, and I've done deals with low-income housing. Marin Housing Authority and Ecumenical Housing are two organizations that are in this county that run low-income housing very effectively and very fairly. We can do it. I think we need to start thinking outside the box. We have to look, I don't think, and I do feel for the woman that was up here who's had a rent increase. Rent control is not the answer. But what is the answer are some of these things we're all touching on. And there is an answer for her, too. I think we have a Section 8 housing crisis. I don't know if any of you have seen this report. But our landowners are not renting to Section 8 housing applicants. And we need to create a way to encourage this. We need to come together as a community to realize that there are people that need help and that there are great programs that are subsidized that are out there. So I think that we should look at this project and think, how can we make it happen? If there are things that aren't working, let's find a way to make it work. If there's a traffic problem, 10 seconds. You've heard what I said. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. This gentleman is next here. Okay, I'll ask the building folks here if someone can get that activated. And Garrett confirmed it won't work unless we have a ladder to get up there. So sorry, we can't address that right now. Okay, so let's go back to our speaker here.
Oh, thank you. I'm George Shea. I live right across the street from the 10 Olema rezoning. And I'm afraid that what I'm hearing from most people is a concern about things like traffic and transportation and so forth. And the reality of the situation is that traffic is out of control, completely unenforced along Sir Francis Drake at any point. The most recent project along Sir Francis Drake took out parking, which in and of itself is a traffic calming type of situation for controlling speed. If you go to Fairfax Market, that's the start-finish line for people in their Porsches and whatever other sports cars or motorcycles they have. And by the time they get to my house, including double tractor trailer trucks with huge boulders in both the trailer and the tractor, and they're doing, I calculate, at about 60 or 70 miles an hour. I've called the police department a number of times. I rarely see any enforcement. When I was younger, I rode a motorcycle. I used to work out at Dixon Ranch out in the valley. And man, if I was going 26 miles an hour, I was pulled over. So I query who it was, what the consultants were, how they figured out that these plans or this transportation system is workable without something being said about how the town of Fairfax, the Marin Transportation Authority, Caltrans, whoever else is in charge of Sir Francis Drake, will account for making life livable along the places that are going to be developed. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim wants to respond.
I'd just like to make a comment, and some of you may know, right now there is $180,000 that's been allocated by the Transportation Authority of Marin to study the Sir Francis Drake corridor and look at improving transit in terms of reliability, efficiency, time certainness, and how that might actually increase the automobile capacity by getting ridership transfer into transit, opening up more capacity on the corridor. It's a big wish list. There's a technical advisory committee that's been put together with the head of Transportation Authority of Marin, which we abbreviate TAM, our supervisor for the Ross Valley, Katie Rice. I'm an appointment from the town of Fairfax. There's the Public Works Director from San Anselmo and the Public Works Director from San Rafael and all the transit agencies. We're putting together a request for proposals from a learned transportation consultant, and that work will begin sometime in the next few months, and the report is due to be delivered in September of next year. So stay tuned. It'll look at the efficiency of existing transit modes. It'll look at some wild ideas, like, you know, people have been floating trolleys for a long time. It'll look at using the old corridor. Remember, this used to be a transit town. It used to have a light rail coming from Larkspur Landing. It'd be looking at that historic corridor and how maybe you could separate transit from cars to make transit absolutely time certain. And so if you're in traffic, you can get on a bus and get there in time. But that study's going on. So there is planning going on at the county level to address the already critical issue of circulation on Sir Francis Drake.
Why is that not before? Why is that not before?
This is totally independent of the issue of housing element law in California and municipalities. And we don't have the luxury of waiting for that transit study to come in. This is going to be a multi-year process to then go back and try to fund and get approval for any tweaking of the transit system. That's the way it is. Your question's well taken. I don't have an answer for you.
Thank you. Thanks for that reply. My next commenter, and so if you want to make a comment, please get in line. I have
been in line all this time.
And are you ready to comment, sir?
I am very ready, Captain.
Okay.
Captain.
Please
sure.
go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
The heart of Fairfax, the heart cave. Keep it real. Except you be converted and become as little children, you shall by no means enter the kingdom of what? Our heaven. Unless you start again, become that trusting, open, surrendered being, that energy that can't come into, that is the kingdom of heaven. Your heart, the energy, it is the same thing, cosmic. All of us are one consciousness of the genetic code. All of us are family, humans. What's your hue? What's your hue? 144,000 different hues, unique and distinct. You are able to be. What's your imagination? Remember when you were 4 years old? You remembered 144,000 years you existed? How long have we been here on this earth? If you believe in evolution or creation, we're all from Europe, not Africa. Don't worry about my clothes. We're all insane. Insanity.
Thank you. My next commenter.
I want to hear. I want to hear Jim respond to that. It's like, what's the town's position on that?
I believe Jim has a performance art piece planned.
And I also say, I agree with everything he said. No, seriously, and I challenge us. I wonder what's the matter with us, with all of our money, all of our jobs, all of our cars, all of our lives, how we spend our time. It's like, think about it. It's like we all need to grow down quite a bit. We're all too, excuse my language, we're all too damn grown up, and the world would be a much better place if more of us were children. And now back to whatever it is I wrote down. My name is Sierra Salen. Where I live is not important. I mean, where I live is on this planet, which is the same place we all live on. And this planet, as one person said, oh, where is it? I need my glasses, sorry. Where is it? Someone said this is a disaster. I say we are the disaster, and any place you look is a disaster, and everything that we buy and throw away and consume is a disaster of the air and the water and the soil. We do have a problem. We have a big problem. How many of us drove here today? How many of us have children? How many of us are children? How many of us fly to faraway lands on vacation? Or how many of us drive here and there or go to the store and buy a bunch of stuff? How many of us turn our thermostats up rather than wearing a sweater or turn our air conditioners down? It's like, personally, I say, let's rip up most of the roads and plant garden space. Radical idea maybe, but look around at what the environment you're doing. We're all here protecting our own interests when it comes right down to it. And we're all human-centric interests. How many of us are protecting the interests of anything else that lives on this planet? We're not. It's all about money, unless we change that. I just want to say one more thing.
And if you could wrap it up, please.
Yes, I know that. I'm not smart enough to figure much out. But I knew that people say it's kind of like, what can one person do? And it's like, we think that we're powerless. And that frustrates me no end, because we are not powerless. We are the power. With every dollar we spend, with every mile we drive, with every product we purchase, we're creating the future. What are we leaving for anything's future, and what are we creating?
Thank you for your comment. Are there others in line here to comment? You're next. Okay.
My name is Jan. I don't even live in Fairfax. However, I used to be an environmental scientist, and I worked with ATSDR, which is it's the environmental part of Centers for Disease Control. And during this whole conversation, I haven't heard one reference about water. And the drought in California is minor compared to the other issues that are going around in the country. So I would encourage everybody, with the knowledge I know, that you really start looking at the issues that are going on. That should be the top priority. It's not the cars. It's not affordability of housing. It's going to be affordability of water. Believe me, if you knew some of the stuff that's really going on, you'd really take a double take on this.
Thank you for your comment. Who is my next speaker? Is there a line here?
My name is Angela Gott. I live in San Rafael. I'm a member of the Silver Tsunami. And if you read the articles in the Marin IJ and in the Pacific Sun, the poverty level for seniors are under $12,000 a year. There's 11,000 seniors, high risk for homelessness, age 62 and up, already on the Marin housing wait list, and none of us have Section 8. We'll never have Section 8, which means we're not going to be able to get Section 8 in these 40 spaces. So I really think the language is imperative that it not be restricted to Section 8. I could afford $330 a month. If the average area mean income for Marin County as a whole is $103,000 a year, how many seniors earn $33,000 a year on their investments and their savings and their IRAs and their Social Security? It just isn't going to happen. So we really need to have affordable housing. And to most seniors, if they're getting about $1,200 a month in Social Security, they have an income stream of about $1,300 maybe, then they need to be able to pay about $330 a month. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Michael McIntosh. I live in San Rafael, but I have a large investment in Fairfax, and I'm very concerned about Fairfax. I feel that the fact that we're all here discussing something that we should have been discussing some time ago is a wonderful relief. It's the correct way to go forward. Sadly, this project was actually closed down on October 22nd to a closed session, not closed session, but a special session that was not televised with only 2 people in the public present, myself and Lou Vaccaro. When we asked the town council if they would actually bring forth the public and allow and listen to our input, we were not allowed. I actually feel the people that were short in this process were the people that worked for many years on our general plan, because they were also taken out of the process when something does not include the public who it's supposed to represent. The process that we're here today is actually not in compliance. When a referendum is filed and certified, as it has been by our town clerk, the town has 2 options. Not an option to go back, not an option to amend. They have an option to either repeal and work forth. And we've heard for months and months and months how this is a living document. So let's take all this input and find something that works. We also have the opportunity of going to the general vote. That will also be additional expenses, which hopefully we don't need to incur. I feel that if this engaged group would stay with this project until November, we could have something that works. But the project before you is not going to provide the affordable housing that we need. This is just a small part in the whole plan for the Bay Area. The Bay Area has currently allocated 621,000 new units over the next 29 years. Marin County's allocation is 30,000 units. If the average household in Marin County generates 10.7 car trips per day, just in Marin County, that's an additional 300 car trips generated and returning back to our homes. We can't afford that. This plan does not provide us a solution. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Your next speaker.
Yes, my name is Clayton Smith. I lived in Fairfax between 73 and 79. Truly loved the town. I live in Tam Valley, and we have down there what they consider the poster child for the affordable housing on their brochures at the planning department up at the county. Let me assure you, not one single person that I can think of who lived in Marin County prior to the time that this was built and opened up for rental lives in that complex. Everyone who lives there came from somewhere else. So if you think that these units are being built for you, you are truly mistaken. That is an absolute fact, and you can see it right across the street from my office every day. The second thing is this is kind of the camel's nose under the tent to bring forward development that is for profit by getting these zones changed. If you want to see what that means, go down to the Wind Cup and on the freeway where Corte Madera threatened, was actually kind of enticed by ABAG to go through a process of rezoning, and immediately following that came a building out of 180 units. Now I want to tell you that there will be 6 low-income, 6 very low-income, 6 low-income, and 6 moderate income in there. But the average rent that I've talked to a friend of the developer, the average rent on this complex for the 2-bedroom units when they go out for rent on its completion is going to be $3,800 a month. Now that's the price. Now if you open up San Francisco Magazine and you look at the Rincon Tower down there and look at the 3-bedroom starting rentals on 3 bedrooms, they brought all that high density down there on the basis of low income. The starting rentals there are $9,150 a month. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your comment. My next speaker.
Stacy Martinez. I've lived in Fairfax for 37 years, and I'd like to know if anyone here can live without water. Everyone in Fairfax has been asked to scale down. As far as I know, in Marin County, our water supply is all reservoir. I haven't heard of one way that we're going to get any more water, and yet we're building more homes. So what does that mean? What do we do? Stop drinking water? Basic need. So for me, it comes down to water and ingress and egress out of this town. If we can figure out a way to drive in and out of here, I'm sorry, I live in a hill. I can't always be on my bike, even though I am a lot. But that's what it comes down to, water and in and out of this community. And if they can figure out that first, then I would consider building.
Thanks for your comment. My next speaker.
Good afternoon, fellow Fairfaxians. My name is Kiki Laporta. My family's lived in Fairfax for about 50 years. I think that this process is a tremendous opportunity and a challenge for us as residents, business people, visitors, passers through of this lovely town. It's an opportunity and a challenge to actually learn what we're talking about and not cling to old beliefs that have been stuck in our head by various means, and we are afraid to let them go and let new ideas and especially new information come in and inform our choices. This process isn't about water, and it isn't even about building housing. This process is about making our housing element and our general plan conform with each other and conform with the law. Even in Fairfax, we are not above the law. I would like to suggest that all of the wonderful minds and the genius of this amazing community that we have could come together and learn and take advantage of this incredible work that's been done to educate us and inform us and enable us to bring our community mission, as Marianne Majori said, people, nature, culture. I don't think any one of us could argue about that. And I think all of us working together can find solutions. But we can't do it if we're divided and going in different directions and not addressing what's at hand. So I encourage you all to let go of your preconceived notions and let's solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, my name is Wendy Callens. I live in Forest Knolls, and I work at 733 Center Boulevard here in Fairfax. I've been working in Fairfax at various capacities for about 35 years. First thing I want to talk about is trust. I think that people have legitimate concerns. And, you know, there are people who genuinely believe that we should not build anything else. And they have a right to those concerns. But I don't want to see that devolve into this disparaging remarks about our council members, our elected officials who volunteer their time, our staff who works really hard for us, and people on either side of this argument that somehow there is some kind of nefarious plot going on and we should trust nobody and nothing that's going on here because it'll never work, it's not going to happen, and there's ulterior motives. Can we please leave that at the border of Fairfax? And I want to talk about what is, for those of us who actually believe in the housing element and what's going on here, what we're talking about is not whether or not there's going to be building or whether or not there's going to be traffic, because believe me, there will be building and there will be traffic. Even if nothing is ever zoned, houses are going to get bigger, more cars are going to go up, and prices are going to go up. What we're trying to do is find a way to direct growth to be more resource efficient, to be smaller, more compact, to be towards the center of the community where there is transit available, where people can ride their bikes, because people who live up in the hills are not able to unless they have those electric bikes, and where we can be more resource efficient with our water, with our energy, with all the things. That's what we're trying to do, is become more sustainable. And there are ways to do it. I happen to believe that this is a good way to do it. Maybe you don't believe it. Can we have a civil conversation about that without calling me names and questioning my motives. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. Our next speaker.
Hi, my name is Guy Meyer. I am not a resident of Fairfax at the moment, but believe me, for all the time I've spent at the music clubs downtown, this is the center of my universe. So, I think, to me, I feel that we're kind of stuck with some myths of civilization, that this is we're dealing with a development plan, and yet everything is more or less what Sierra was saying. Where is the green, do we leave the human footprint and we step back? I feel that we're totally open. The whole world is waiting for us, probably Fairfax, USA, to say, smaller footprint. The Fairfax we're gonna have a smaller human footprint. Physical, asphalt, pavement, smaller. Measure July 12th. What's the temperature? Take a picture from outer space. Take it again next year. Guess what? Next year we have more vegetation. The whole planet should be on this Zoom. For the state, good law-abiding people that we are, where does democracy start? Why is this a requirement for the state to tell any town in California how big or what they have to do for their community? Why? Where is this democracy? This is not democracy. And I think we have a right, and I think we have a duty to stand up. The NIMBYism stuff is just pure baloney. You proudly stand up for your neighborhoods, proudly say, and the growth thing. The country was almost at zero growth, particularly when the 2008, now it's boomtown again. The developers, everything, more people. 100,000 people leave California every year, 170,000 new immigrants come in every year. Something is wrong. Density is not good. Density is killing us. And the silver tsunami is an indication that we might not even need that. A lot of us are going to be gone in a short time. You know, there's going to be more room for the next generation if we had a little common sense and less kids.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I think you're next, and then...
Hi, my name is Chris McManus. I live across from the church project on Sir Francis Drake. I'm a lifelong Marin County resident, and I'm a Fairfax resident. I really want to thank the town council for having this meeting. I want to thank the Planning Commission for doing all this work to inform the citizens of Fairfax, because there's been so much misinformation, so many allegations, and so much misrepresentation, which created the referendum to rescind Ordinance 778. I really want to see us meet our housing element to be in compliance. I want to see the general plan get back on track. I have to answer something. Somebody said that by rescinding the general plan, we're going back to the Nixon administration. You know, that might have been wrong. We might be going back to the Gerald Ford administration. I'm not sure. But the fact of the matter is, it is a living document, that there are changes. You have to, you have to do it as it goes along. The church project, if you do go to the church, there is a site plan. You can see it. They have it. But, everything isn't finished because it kind of got abruptly stopped by this referendum to rescind. We do live in capitalism. People do make profits when they work. This isn't a Marxist-Leninist structure. The system is made for sometimes people make profits. You're going to have to live with that. They did go through CEQA. The CEQA's already gone through. They went through it. There is a site plan. I also wanted to say that, RCD has a track record over here at the church project. They're good. It's a good project. It's a good plan, and it's a good housing element. Let's get back on track. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And if there's anyone, I think we just have one or two more people waiting in line. If there's anyone else who wants to ask a question who hasn't spoken yet, please join us in line, and we should be wrapping up in the next maybe 10, 15 minutes. Please go ahead with your comment.
Thank you. My name is Norma. I live in Fairfax. And I appreciate the last two speakers, two or three speakers in particular. I also believe we have a very beautiful general plan and housing element. And unfortunately, Fairfax has not yet seceded from the country or from the state. And so we are bound by certain laws. But really, the main point I want to make is that I see a lot of well-intentioned people here worried about, is that housing really going to be affordable? Is that house going to have a Mexican woman with kids, a single household earner? Is it going to be at 30% a median? Is it going to be a white family? Are they going to have 3 kids and 2 cars, or 2 cars and 3 kids? And, you know, whatever you guys want to think about that is great. I don't really care. But really, the point here is not, there is no house. There is no house yet. There is no plan for a house submitted to the town. This is only a general plan document that says you have a piece of property, you can build 1 house on it, or you can build 5 houses, or you can build 7 houses. But that's all the plan says. It's just a land. How many houses can you build? Can you fit on a piece of property? People arguing about who's going to live there and what the income range is and how the parking will work out. This is not really the time and place to have that discussion. The time and place for those discussions are when a proposal, an application really comes through for planning permits, for building permits, for entitlements. That's when people need to show up and talk about if parking is important, if you want to negotiate development rights for more affordability. That's a different time. It's a long process, and people need to stick with it if you want to get to the means that you would like to see in this community.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker.
I'm Alexander Binnick. I've lived in Fairfax more than 22 years. I'm going to speak quickly. I think that many people I've spoken to feel similarly to myself, that we'd love to see truly affordable housing for very low-income people in Fairfax. That trade-off with increased traffic congestion might be worth it. But many of us are concerned that the current proposals in this rezoning will have unintended consequences and not meet those needs and create something else entirely. So I don't think it's fair to say we don't want affordable housing. Given all the errors, omissions, and inconsistencies, is the term, in Ordinance 778, it makes the most sense to first repeal it and come back with measures that have the appropriate corrections, including the proposed future actions, and then rezone project by project. The town council can pass legislation protecting the rest of the greater downtown area from formula housing without the need to change the CH designation to CC. Even if 778 is repealed, our housing element is already certified by the state, so that's a non-issue. You should know that Marin County has just approved a density of 47 additional units at the Oak Manor Strip Mall. It's a little piece carved out that isn't considered the town of Fairfax, but it's still been approved for 47 additional units. And they also approved, the county approved over at the Sunnyside growing grounds at the far end of Sir Francis Drake, a whole lot more units. This is all going to have an impact for us. Okay.
Yeah, you just have about 10 more seconds, sir.
It's not clear that the 17 units designated for the Fairfax market site assume the market itself and adequate store parking will remain. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment, sir. Well, we have everyone in line has spoken, so I'd like to turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you very much all for coming. Please stick around. Take a second look at all of the charts on the wall. I know Jim is going to be here. We want to make sure that all of your questions are answered before you depart. Again, we can't thank you enough. Please come down on Wednesday for the further conversation on this. And just to reiterate, this is the first of what will be a series of conversations on all this. Again, thank you all very much, and see you on Wednesday.